there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we have a really simple card, but I think this one turned out really gorgeous. So to create a really quick background, and I want this to be a light background, I'm going to do some quick kind of watercolor smushing. I'm using some Shooting Star and some Guppy. These are water reactive dye inks from Hurley, and I'm popping these down onto a little non-stick mat. This is actually the replacement mat for the glass media mat, the Tim Holtz one. But I don't own the glass media mat. I just like the size of these replacement mats. They have a really low price point for such a good silicone backed non-stick mat. So I really like these ones. I added some water to my ink, and I also popped some water onto my piece of watercolor cardstock. This is the Tim Holtz watercolor cardstock. It's the only one I use. It's the only one I love. It holds up to water and media really, really well. I'm going to dry this off, and do you know what? I really like my first little impression here. Now, against my better judgment, I kind of dip it in again and was just trying to do a little bit here and there to see if I liked it, and I didn't want this for this card, so I quickly used my finger to wipe it away and kind of get rid of some of those marks that I created there. I really just like the first dipping, which is unusual for me, but I just liked the mix of the yellow and the orange. I like how it turned out, so I wanted to leave it be, which is, as I said, unusual, but I loved it this way. Then, for this, I want to use embossing folders because I love to use them in as many different ways as possible. So I want to cut this down to be 3 3/4 by 5 inches. So this is where I'm kind of selecting the bits that I want, mainly my main panel. Now from here, for the measurements, I'm going to cut the panel at 2.5 inches. For the left hand side, there'll be 2.5 inches left over, and then I'm actually going to, at the 2-minute and 50-second mark of this video, I am going to pause the video for 10 seconds and put all of the measurements on screen for where you need to cut and how big you need to make each piece. So if you need to pause it and write those down or take a screenshot, then that is the time to do it. But the left hand piece here, I'm cutting at 2.5 by 3 inches, and that will leave a piece that is 2.5 by 2 inches down the bottom. And then this other piece here will be 1 1/4 by 1 1/4, and then 1 1/4 by 3 3/4. So, and then from there you can decide how you want to pop these on your piece of paper. You can have them on the left hand side, the right hand side, you can kind of switch them around. And if you guys have watched my channel for a little bit, then you will know that measuring is not my strong point. If I can get away with not measuring on a card, then I will probably do it, but for this one, honestly, it just really helps to have those measurements. So I've put them there on the screen for you, and I hope that that is helpful. They are in inches, of course, and now I have chosen 4 embossing folders out of my stash that I thought would work kind of together, but they don't really have to. I mean, all embossing folders pretty much go together, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to whip these through really quickly. You guys know the process of how I emboss. I do use a brown embossing mat to go underneath these when it goes through my Big Shot machine. I also just thought I would quickly share that I have changed over, or upgraded, I guess, to a Big Shot machine. I have used my Cuttlebug since I began card making. I've never had another die cutting machine. I only ever used my Cuttlebug, and it finally did die on me, bearing in mind that I use mine a lot, every day pretty much. So it did die, but I did purchase a Big Shot, and I'm really happy with it. It is always hard to kind of move to a new machine from what you know, but once you get used to it, it is a really great machine, and I'm loving it so far. So once I have done all 4 panels, the trick is here that you can hardly see the embossing. So I'm going to use the Slippery When Wet color, and this is basically in between the Guppy and the Shooting Star that I used for the background. Now, I don't know that for officially, but to me it's what looks like it's going to be the color in between them. I am taking a makeup sponge. This one has been used before, but I am just going to use the other side to dab lightly into my ink, and then I really just want to glide across the top. Now the difference is very subtle, I will admit, but I think it makes a really big difference to just bring out that pattern that we have embossed. So you can see, just in comparison to the panel below it where you can barely see the pattern, I think adding this little bit of ink, just kind of gliding over top, and it really brings the pattern out, so you can definitely tell what the embossing folder is that you used. You can also go straight with an ink pad onto your design as well. I sometimes find that a little bit riskier, and at this point, once I had done all the measuring and all these steps, I wanted to keep it fairly safe, so that's why I chose to go with a little makeup sponge. But I've definitely done it before, where you just go straight into it with your ink pad, and that does work really well, especially if you hold the ink pad nice and flat and you're kind of not pressing too hard, just with a very, very delicate hand. So this is what I've ended up with so far. You can see all 4 of those patterns have come out really nicely. And at this point, I did think I would add a little matte layer, which is kind of unusual for me. Often I will just go around the edge of whatever I'm trying to highlight or create a little border for. But I did decide to quickly whip through and create a tiny little border for each one of these. Now, I don't have the measurements for these. I just made them 1/8 of an inch bigger each. So that means I had a kind of 1/16 of a border or so that went around the edge, all around the outside edge. So yeah, I just used the original measurements and just went ever so slightly bigger, but not much at all. And this was all the grey cardstock that I have left, so it was a bit risky, and I did not have much to spare if I got it wrong. Then I'm just going to use some matte medium. This is the Ranger Multi-Medium in the matte finish, and pop this down onto my panels. This bit is going to be nice and flat. Now, this is all well and good, and I think at this point I love these backgrounds, and I do find them really simple and easy, but sometimes I get stuck here as to what I'm going to do on top of this, and kind of how I finish this off to become a finished card, rather than just having this gorgeous looking background that we have created. So I hope that, along with a really fun and pretty easy background to use up some of our cool embossing folders, I hope that this gives you an idea or two on what you could add to the front of these to finish them off. I wanted to not use something that was just going to plonk right in the middle there, because I want to make it really obvious that what we've done here to create this little background, and I didn't want to cover up where the cards, where those panels kind of intersect and kind of come next to each other, because I felt like that was part of the coolness of what we had created. So I didn't want to cover that up, but I still want to add something on front rather than just a sentiment. So I was a little balancing act there. Now again, I really love using liquid glue for this, because as you can see, I move my panels around even after I have glued them down to make sure that they are in the right place and all evenly spaced. Now this is the Dainty Blossoms by Pinkfresh Studios. I have used this lots. This is quite an old set. It is still available though, and I die cut some of this out in the last bit of grey that I had. I had to go digging for this grey scrap, but it is the same as what I've used for the matting layer, and I have die cut it once in the grey cardstock, and then I also die cut it once in just plain white cardstock. Now what you could have done here is added some stickered adhesive, like double-sided adhesive sheets to the back of this die cut, but I did not do that. And if I don't do that for a really dainty die cut, I just pop a little bit of the matte medium down. I'm using that same sponge that I used for the colour earlier on, and I just folded it in half so as not to get ink all over my fingers, and I dab it into that liquid glue, and then I'm just going to add it onto the back of my really dainty die cut there. And then this one is going to go kind of over on that left hand side. It kind of feels like it's centered, but it's going to go, I guess, against the left hand panels. And because this is so dainty, I don't feel like it takes away from the background that we have created, which was really important when I was figuring out something to go on the front here. So if I hold this down, get it in the right place, and then hold it down, that matte medium is going to make sure that this does not go anywhere. Here is the one that I die cut in the plain white cardstock, except I left it in there and I put some low-tack tape on the back because I'm going to do some inlay here. Now I wanted that gorgeous little flower just to stand out a touch more, but I didn't really want to introduce any new colors, so I felt like white was perfect here. So all I'm doing, this is like a puzzle, I'm taking a little bit of glue and popping it in those empty spaces, and then I am going to take out the pieces from the white die cut there, the inside pieces, and pop those into the puzzle piece that I have down on the grey one. So it does take me a minute, and this one does have some little pieces, but with a pair of reverse tweezers, this is no problem at all, and I think it kind of highlights the little white flowers or the buds or the leaves, whatever they are meant to be in this image, without kind of taking away from our background too much, the design that we created and the embossing that we put on them. So I was pretty happy with how this one turned out. To finish this off with, I did want to pop a little sentiment on this one, and as per usual at the minute, I am reaching for my word fragment stamp set over and over and over again because I love these little black borders. I feel like it finishes off the sentiment without me having to do anything extra. So I am using some VersaFine clear pigment ink to stamp this. This is the Morning Mist color, and I'm using this because it is grey. It is very similar to the color that I used for the matting layer and for the flower. So I am going to cut around this with my long bladed scissors. This is the trick to me getting it straight. I often get asked, how do I cut out my sentiment so straight? It is definitely the long bladed scissors. If I try and cut them out with my cutter bees, it would give you a real laugh because I cannot do it with short bladed scissors. So long bladed scissors is where it's at, and I use the Tim Holtz ones. That was my video for today. Let me know in the comment section below this if you have given this a go or it looks like one that you might give a go. It's very simple, but thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Thanks, bye!